President Trump's 50% tariff on most imported copper products has fueled a surge in copper prices. While the import tax might not increase the production of the metal in the United States, it has led to another domestic spike.
Well, back to Squawk on the Street. Copper prices surging this year. U.S. demand expected to grow 40%. That's over the next decade. Of course, there are still some big questions around foreign metal imports.
Imagine waking up to news that Africa just walked away from a $7 billion copper deal with the United States and handed it to a completely different partner. Not just a small deal, but one of the largest copper contracts Africa has signed in years. For Washington, this wasn't just a business loss. It was a strategic blow. Copper is the backbone of electric cars, renewable energy, smartphones. The entire future of technology. Losing access to Africa's copper means losing power in the industries that drive tomorrow. But here's the twist. African leaders say they didn't switch partners by accident. They say this deal was a statement, a message to the world that Africa is no longer waiting for America's approval, no longer accepting old terms, and no longer playing by old rules. So what really happened? Why did Africa give this $7 billion deal to someone else? And what does this mean for the future of U.S.-Africa relations? Today we break down the real story behind the copper deal that shocked America and changed everything. The world woke up shocked when news broke that Africa had pulled out of a major copper deal with the United States, a deal worth an unbelievable $7 billion. For months, American companies and diplomats believed the contract was secured, sealed, and ready for announcement. But overnight, Africa signed the deal with a different partner. Not only did America lose one of the largest mineral agreements of the year, but it also lost influence in a region it once believed it had long-term control over. This moment wasn't just a business decision. It was political. It was emotional. And for many African leaders, it was about respect, dignity, and long overdue independence. For America, it was a warning that its old playbook no longer works. The world has changed, Africa has changed, and the global competition for minerals has entered a new era. To understand why this happened, we need to go back to the beginning, back to copper itself. Copper may sound simple, but it is one of the most important minerals in modern civilization. It powers electricity. It is in cars, phones, laptops, hospital machines, trains, and military systems. And now, in the age of electric vehicles, renewable energy, and digital infrastructure, copper demand has exploded around the world. Every electric car uses more than twice as much copper as a gasoline car. Solar farms, wind turbines, and power grids need massive amounts of copper to function. Without copper, the future of technology, clean energy, and global manufacturing collapses. Africa is home to two of the biggest copper-producing nations on Earth, Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Together, they hold some of the richest copper belts ever discovered. For years, American companies have wanted deeper access to African copper, not only for economic reasons but also for national security. The United States sees copper as part of the strategic race for control over the minerals of the future. Whoever controls minerals like copper, lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earths controls the industries of tomorrow. And in this race, the U.S. is falling behind. This is why the $7 billion copper deal with Africa was such a big opportunity. For the U.S., it was a chance to secure long-term supply, reduce dependence on other countries, and strengthen influence in a region that is rapidly becoming the center of global mining power. For African leaders, the deal represented something different, a promise of major investment, jobs, infrastructure, and modern mining technology. Both sides stood to gain. Everything looked set, meetings were concluded, negotiations seemed stable. American companies were already preparing public statements. Diplomats were congratulating themselves. Then the unexpected happened. Africa walked away. Not slowly, not quietly. It was a clean cut, and America didn't see it coming. The reason for this sudden shift begins with one truth African leaders have repeated for years. They are tired of unfair deals, old conditions, and slow promises. For decades, African countries have complained that Western partners ask for too much control, give too little in return, and move too slowly when Africa needs development now. African ministers say they want partners who don't treat them like junior players, but equal players. They want deals that benefit African communities, not just foreign companies. So when a new partner stepped forward with bigger offers, faster guarantees, and more respect, Africa made its choice. Sources close to the negotiations say the new partner offered 5 major advantages America didn't match. First, the new partner promised to build new local infrastructure, roads, power stations, and processing plants, instead of shipping raw copper overseas. Second, they committed to training local African engineers and workers to take leadership roles. Third, they gave Africa a larger profit share, nearly double what American companies initially offered. Fourth, they agreed to build a local copper refining facility, something Africa has been demanding for decades. Fifth, and perhaps the most important, they signed the deal without months of political conditions, restrictions, or delays. African leaders say this last point matters more than the world realizes. For years, the U.S. has attached political requirements to almost every major deal: governance rules, transparency checks, human rights, conditions, and approval systems that take too long. To American officials, these conditions are part of responsible governance, but too many African leaders, they feel like pressure, interference, or a lack of trust. So when a new partner offered the same business opportunity without all these extra layers, Africa made the switch. Inside Washington, the reaction was immediate and intense. Officials were shocked. Analysts called it a major geopolitical loss. Economists warned that America was losing its place in the global copper supply chain, and for the American energy sector, the news was a wake-up call. Without access to African copper, the U.S. may struggle to meet its future needs for electric vehicles, renewable energy projects, and expanding power grids. Today's world runs on minerals, and copper is increasingly the backbone of that world. But the story doesn't end there. The real issue goes deeper than copper. The $7 billion deal represents a much larger trend. Africa is choosing its partners based on respect, opportunity, and long-term vision, not based on old alliances or pressure. For decades, African countries relied heavily on Western states for loans, trade, aid, and partnerships. But now Africa has options. Many nations are competing to work with Africa. Countries from Asia, the Middle East, South America, and even Eastern Europe are offering Africa bigger investments, faster deals, and long-term cooperation. This is the new Africa, an Africa that negotiates from a position of strength, not weakness. An Africa that understands its worth. An Africa that knows copper, cobalt, lithium, gold, and nickel are the world's most powerful bargaining tools. An Africa that no longer accepts being used as a source of raw materials without fair returns. And an Africa that is no longer afraid to walk away from deals that don't respect its interests. The copper deal also created a wave of pride across social media in many African countries. Young Africans celebrated the decision, calling it a symbol of independence. Comments flooded online saying Africa is finally choosing what is best for Africa, and the world must respect Africa now. Many citizens said they want leaders who put national development above foreign pressure. They want deals that build schools, hospitals, roads, and industries. They want contracts that create skilled jobs and support local communities. The new partner promised those things and backed the promises with action. Still, America is not giving up. Reports say U.S. officials are already planning new diplomatic visits, new investment packages, and new offers to African countries in the mining sector. But experts warn that America must approach Africa differently if it wants to rebuild trust. It must treat Africa as an equal partner. It must understand that Africa is no longer isolated or desperate. Africa is becoming the heart of global mineral supply. Without copper, cobalt, and lithium from Africa, the future of the world's technology slows down, and this gives African nations leverage like never before. The story of the $7 billion copper deal is not just about money or minerals. It is about power shifting from old centers to new ones. It is about Africa rising with confidence, demanding fair trade, and making choices based on national interest, not external expectations. It is about a world where Africa is not a passive player, but a major driver of global direction. This moment also marks a turning point for how African resources are handled. For decades, copper left Africa raw and cheap, while the finished products sold for 100 times more. Africa earned pennies while foreign companies earned billions. But now Africa wants value addition, not just extraction, processing, refining, manufacturing. These are the industries that create wealth, not simply mining. African leaders say the continent cannot continue exporting minerals and importing poverty. The new copper deal includes commitments to build refineries within Africa, meaning copper will be processed locally, creating thousands of jobs and billions in long-term revenue. This aligns with Africa's new development strategy: keep the value chain inside the continent. The more Africa processes and manufactures, the more it integrates into the global economy as a producer, not just a supplier. Some American analysts argue that losing this deal could push the U.S. to rethink its strategy in Africa entirely. They warn that if the U.S. continues to lose mineral deals, it will become more dependent on foreign competitors for the technologies of the future. They also warn that this loss could weaken American influence in African politics, business, and diplomacy. But others say this moment could also be a chance for America to start building more respectful, balanced relationships with African nations. From Africa's perspective, the message is clear: the continent is open for business, but only under fair conditions. Africa will not accept deals with poor revenue shares, exploitative clauses, or slow development promises. The copper deal was a symbol of this new reality, a reality where Africa chooses partners who treat it with dignity and seriousness. As the news continues to spread globally, experts agree on one point: this is just the beginning. More mineral deals are coming, more competition is coming, and Africa's decisions will shape the future of global industries for decades. The loss of the $7 billion copper deal is a big moment for the United States, but it is also a powerful declaration by Africa. It is a declaration that Africa is rising, that Africa is choosing its future, that Africa is not afraid to say no, and that the world must now negotiate with Africa on Africa's terms. In a world where minerals have become the new oil, Africa holds the keys to the future, and this time Africa is ready to use them. As we come to the end of this story, one thing is clear. The loss of the $7 billion copper deal was not just an isolated event. It was a signal, a loud, unmistakable message from Africa to the world. A message that says the era of silent acceptance is over. The era of dependency is over. The era of overlooking African voices, African demands, and African priorities is over. Today, Africa is rewriting the rules and the world is watching closely. Because what happened with this copper deal was bigger than business, bigger than contracts, bigger than profit margins. What happened was a shift in identity, a declaration of self-determination, dignity, and vision. Africa is stepping into a new age, one where it chooses partners based on respect, fairness, and long-term value. One where it demands more than promises. One where it looks beyond who used to have power and instead focuses on who truly brings progress. And for many Africans, this decision was not just strategic, it was emotional. For years, people across the continent have watched foreign nations extract billions of dollars in minerals while their own communities remained poor. They have watched copper leave the continent in raw form, sent overseas to create wealth for others, while African miners worked under difficult conditions for little reward. They have watched political pressure, hidden conditions, and slow-moving deals hold back progress while their countries waited for opportunities that never came. So when Africa chose a new partner, a partner willing to build roads, factories, processing plants, a partner willing to train African engineers, create African jobs, and respect African sovereignty, many citizens felt a sense of pride that had been missing for a long time. They felt seen, they felt valued, they felt powerful. Because for once the world wasn't telling Africa what to do. Africa was telling the world what it wanted and choosing what worked best for its people. On the other side of the ocean, the reaction in America was also emotional. There was shock, disappointment, even anger. There were debates about how the U.S. lost influence. There were questions about whether America underestimated Africa's growing confidence and options. And there were urgent conversations about how the U.S. must change its approach if it hopes to remain a serious player in the race for global minerals. But the most important conversations happening now are not in Washington, they're in Africa. African citizens are asking their leaders for even more transparency, even more fairness, and even more commitment to national development. They want to ensure that this deal is not just a political win but a social and economic one. They want to make sure the wealth created from copper stays within the continent, building schools, hospitals, roads, energy systems, and industries that transform lives. They want to move from exporting raw minerals to exporting finished products. They want to move from global spectators to global competitors. And this copper deal, this one decision, showed that it is possible. It showed that Africa does not have to accept less. It does not have to wait years for progress. It does not have to operate under old systems of control. Africa can negotiate. Africa can walk away. Africa can say no. Africa can choose differently. This is why the world is paying attention. Not because of the $7 billion, although the loss is huge, but because of what it represents. A shift in global power. A shift in confidence. A shift in priorities. A shift in Africa itself. As we close this story, it's important to remember one thing. This is not the end. It is the beginning of a new chapter. More mineral deals will come. More competition will come. More negotiations will test how the world interacts with Africa. And every time, Africa will have the ability to decide what is best for its people and its future. The loss of the copper deal may have surprised America, but it awakened something in Africa, a belief that the continent holds the keys to the world's next industrial era. And now, more than ever, Africa is learning how to use those keys. The world must adapt. The world must listen. The world must respect Africa's choices. Because the message has been sent. Africa is rising. Africa is choosing. And Africa will no longer accept a seat in the back of the room. It is claiming its place at the table and building its own table if needed. Thank you for watching this story. Stay with us as we continue to uncover the global shifts shaping Africa's future and the world's future. The journey is only beginning.